Hiber-Nation 29. Grizzly's Growls presents Stories from the Hiber-Nation. Monarch, the Big Bear of Tallac, by Ernest Thompson Seton, as read by David Grizzly Smith. This book is dedicated to the memory of the days in Tallac's pines, where by the fire I heard this epic tale. Kind memory calls the picture up before me now, clear, living clear. I see them as they sat, one small and slight, the other tall and brawny, leader and led, rough men of the hills. They told me this tale. In broken bits they gave it, a sentence at a time. They were ready to talk, but knew not how. Few their words, and those they used would be empty on paper, meaningless without the puckered lip, the interhiss, the brutal semi-snarl restrained by human mastery, the snap and jerk of wrist and gleam of steel-gray eye that really told the tale, of which the spoken word was mere headline. Another, subtler theme was theirs that night. Not in the line, but in the interline it ran, and listening to the hunter's ruder tale, I heard as one might hear the night birds singing in the storm. Amid the glitter of the mica I caught the glint of gold, for theirs was a parable of hill-born power that fades when it finds the plains. They told of the giant redwood's growth from a tiny seed, of the avalanche that, born a snowflake, heaves and grows on the peaks, to shrink and die on the level lands below. They told of the river at our feet, of its rise, a thread-like rill afar on Tallac's side, and its growth, a brook, a stream, a little river, a mighty flood that rolled and ran from hills to plain to meet a final doom so strange that only the wise believe. Yes, I've seen it. It is there today, the river, the wonderful river that unabated flows but that never reaches the sea. I give you the story then as it came to me, and yet I do not give it, for theirs is a tongue unknown to script. I give a dim translation, dim but in all ways respectful, reverencing the indomitable spirit of the mountaineer, worshipping the mighty beast that nature built a monument of power, and loving and worshipping the clash, the awful strife, heroic at the close when these two met. Forward. The story of Monarch is founded on material gathered from many sources as well as from personal experience, and the bear is of necessity a composite. The great grizzly, Monarch, still pacing his prison floor at Golden Gate Park, is the central fact of the tale. In telling it, I have taken two liberties that I conceive to be proper in a story of this sort. First, I have selected for my hero an unusual individual. Second, I have ascribed to that one animal the adventures of several of his kind. The aim of the story is to picture the life of a grizzly with the added glamour of a remarkable bear personality. The intention is to convey the known truth, but the fact that liberties have been taken excludes the story from the catalogue of pure science. It must be considered, rather, an historical novel of bear life. Many different bears were concerned in the early adventures here related, but the last two chapters, the captivity and the despair of the big bear, are told as they were told to me by several witnesses, including my friends the two mountaineers. Part 1. The Two Springs. High above Sierra's peaks stands grim Mount Tallac. 10,000 feet above the sea it rears its head to gaze out north to that vast and wonderful turquoise that men call Lake Tahoe, and northwest across a piney sea to its great white sister, Shasta of the Snows. Wonderful colors and things on every side, mast-like pine trees strung with jewelry, streams that a Buddhist would have made sacred, hills that an Arab would have held holy. But Lan Kellyan's keen gray eyes were turned to other things. The childish delight in life and light for their own sakes had faded, as they must in one whose training has been to make him hold them very cheap. Why value grass? All the world is grass. Why value air when it is everywhere in measureless immensity? And why value life when, all alive, his living came from taking life? His senses were alert not for rainbow hills and gem-bright lakes, but for the living things that he must meet in daily rivalry, each staking on the game his life. Hunter was written on his leathern garb, on his tawny face, on his lithe and sinewy form, and shone in his clear gray eye. The cloven granite peak might pass unmarked, but a faint dimple in the sod did not. Calipers could not have told that it was widened at one end, but the hunter's eye did, and following, he looked for and found another, then smaller signs, and he knew that a big bear and two little ones had passed, and were still close at hand, for the grass in the marks was yet unbending. Lan rode his hunting pony on the trail. It sniffed and stepped nervously, for it knew as well as the rider that a grizzly family was near. They came to a terrace leading to an open upland. 20 feet on this side of it, Lan slipped to the ground, dropped the reins, the well-known sign to the pony that he must stand on that spot, and then cocked his rifle and climbed the bank. At the top he went with yet greater caution, and soon saw an old grizzly with her two cubs. She was lying down some 50 yards away and afforded a poor shot. He fired at what seemed to be the shoulder. The aim was true, but the bear got only a flesh wound. She sprang to her feet and made for the place where the puff of smoke arose. The bear had 50 yards to cover. The man had 15, but she came racing down the bank before he was fairly on the horse, and for 100 yards the pony bounded in terror while the old grizzly ran almost alongside, striking at him and missing by a scant hair's breadth each time. But the grizzly rarely keeps up its great speed for many yards. The horse got under full headway, and the shaggy mother, falling behind, gave up the chase and returned to her cubs. She was a singular old bear. She had a large patch of white on her breast, white cheeks and shoulders, graded into brown elsewhere, and Lan, from this, remembered her afterward as the Pinto. She'd almost caught him that time, and the hunter was ready to believe he owed her a grudge. A week later came his chance. As he passed along the rim of Pocket Gulch, a small, deep valley with sides of sheer rock in most places, he saw afar the old Pinto bear with her two little brown cubs. She was crossing from one side, where the wall was low, to another part easy to climb. As she stopped to drink at the clear stream, Land fired with his rifle. At the shot, Pinto turned on her cubs, slapping first one, then the other. She chased them up a tree. Now, a second shot struck her, and she charged fiercely up the sloping part of the wall, clearly recognizing the whole situation and determined to destroy that hunter. She came snorting up the steep acclivity, wounded and raging, only to receive a final shot in the brain that sent her rolling back to lie dead at the bottom of Pocket Gulch. The hunter, after waiting to make sure, moved to the edge and fired another shot into the old one's body. Then, reloading, he went cautiously down to the tree where still were the cubs. They gazed at him with wild seriousness as he approached them, and when he began to climb, they scrambled up higher. Here one set up a plaintive whining, and the other an angry growling, their outcries increasing as he came nearer. He took out a stout cord and, noosing them in turn, dragged them to the ground. One rushed at him, and though little bigger than a cat, would certainly have done him serious injury had he not held it off with a forked stick. After tying them to a strong but swaying branch, he went to his horse, got a grain bag, dropped them into that, and rode with them to his shanty. He fastened each with a collar and chain to a post, up which they climbed, and sitting on the top they whined and growled according to their humor. For the first few days there was danger of the cubs strangling themselves or of starving to death, but at length they were beguiled into drinking some milk most ungently procured from a range cow that was lassoed for the purpose. In another week they seemed somewhat reconciled to their lot, and thenceforth plainly notified their captor whenever they wanted food or water. And thus the two small rills ran on, a little farther down the mountain now, deeper and wider, keeping near each other, leaping bars, rejoicing in the sunlight, held for a while by some trivial dam, but overleaping that and running on with pools and deeps that harbor bigger things. Thank you for listening to Stories from the Hiber-Nation. Comment on the website at grizzliesgrowls.com. This program is offered under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives license.